"You're not on the list," my dad said like it meant nothing. I smiled, left a gift, and left. But one man stood and said, "That's my boss." The room froze. The moment I stepped out of the car, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. The valet hesitated, unsure whether to take my keys. I handed them over anyway, nodding politely. The building ahead shimmered with golden lights, laughter spilling out through the glass doors. It was my father's annual charity gala, his pride and joy. Everyone who mattered was inside. Everyone but me. I hadn't seen my father in over 10 years. Not since he remarried and quietly erased me from his life. No calls. No letters. Just silence. I didn't come back for him. I came for someone else. Someone who still believed in me. The town hadn't changed much. The streets were familiar but colder. My name still echoed in whispers, but not in his house. Not in his world. I walked past the red carpet, past the photographers who didn't raise their cameras. I wasn't part of their story. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I approached the entrance. The doorman gave me a polite smile, then checked his tablet. His smile faded. "Name?" he asked. Before I could answer, my father appeared. He was dressed in a tailored tuxedo, surrounded by donors and socialites. He saw me instantly. His expression didn't change. No surprise. No warmth. Just a calm, dismissive glance. He walked over and said, "You're not on the list." No emotion. No hesitation. Just those words. I looked at him, the man who used to read me bedtime stories, who taught me how to swim, who stopped calling once he found someone new. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I simply nodded, reached into my coat pocket, and pulled out a small box wrapped in navy paper with a silver ribbon. "I came to drop this off," I said, handing it to one of the staff members nearby. "It's for the silent auction." My father didn't even glance at the box. "You should go," he said, already turning back toward his guests. I turned too, but not before catching the eyes of a few people in the crowd. Some recognized me. Some didn't. One woman whispered something to her friend and they both looked away quickly. I walked slowly, deliberately toward the exit. My heart wasn't racing. It was steady. I had prepared for this moment. Outside the air was crisp. I paused at the top of the steps, looking out over the city lights. I remembered standing here as a teenager, waiting for my dad to finish his speeches, holding his coat while he shook hands with people who called him sir. Back then I thought I'd be part of this world. I thought I'd grow into it. Instead I built my own. I was halfway down the steps when I heard it. A voice, clear and firm, cutting through the music and chatter inside. "That's my boss." I stopped. Turned. The man who spoke was tall, dressed in a tailored suit, standing near the center of the room. People around him had gone quiet. My father had frozen mid-sentence. The man stepped forward, eyes locked on me. "She's the reason I'm here," he said. "She's the reason half of you are here." The silence deepened. My father's face shifted, just slightly. Confusion. Then recognition. Then something else. Something he hadn't shown me in years. I walked back up the steps slowly. Not to make a scene. Not to prove a point. Just to stand in the doorway and watch. The man, Marcus, turned to the crowd. "You all know me as the CEO of Halden and Company. What you don't know is that she mentored me when I had nothing. She taught me everything I know about leadership, about integrity, about building something that lasts." He looked at my father. "And you didn't even put her on the list." The room was still. I could hear someone cough. A glass clinked against a table. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Marcus had said enough. One of the donors stepped forward. "Is that true?" he asked me. I nodded. "I helped Marcus start his first company. Years ago." Another voice chimed in. "You're Evelyn, right? I remember you from the tech summit in Berlin." I smiled. That was a long time ago. My father looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. Not as the daughter he had dismissed, but as someone who had built something without him. Someone who had returned, not to beg but to give. I turned to the staff member still holding the gift box. "Make sure it gets to the auction table." He nodded quickly. Marcus walked over and stood beside me. "You should stay," he said quietly. I shook my head. "I didn't come to stay. I came to deliver something." He looked disappointed, but he understood. As I walked away again, the whispers behind me weren't the same. They weren't about the girl who didn't belong. They were about the woman who had changed everything. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The invitation had never come. But the impact had. And that was louder than any list. Marcus's voice still lingered in the air as he stepped forward, his gaze steady, his presence commanding. The crowd parted instinctively as if they sensed something monumental was unfolding. He didn't rush. He walked with the kind of quiet confidence that didn't need to be announced. I stood still, watching him approach, unsure if I should brace myself or smile. He stopped just a few feet from me and extended his hand. "Evelyn," he said, his voice softer now, "you taught me everything." I took his hand, and for a moment the room felt like it had paused. No music. No chatter. Just the weight of truth pressing down on every corner. "You built me," Marcus continued, turning slightly to address the crowd. "When I had nothing, no connections, no capital, no clue, she saw something in me. She didn't just invest money. She invested time, wisdom, patience." A woman near the bar gasped. I recognized her, an old colleague from my early startup days. She leaned toward her husband and whispered, "That's Evelyn?" I thought she moved overseas. My father stood frozen, his glass still in hand, untouched. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He had spent years pretending I was invisible. Now he couldn't look away. Marcus gestured toward the auction table. "That gift she left. It's not just a donation. It's a message." The staff member who had taken the box earlier stepped forward, holding it carefully. Marcus opened it with deliberate care, revealing a folded letter and a check. He read aloud. "To the cause that once inspired me, I match your goal, not for recognition but to remind you that value isn't always visible. Evelyn." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The gala's fundraising goal had been ambitious, nearly $500,000. Matching it anonymously was unheard of. And yet here it was. Quiet. Powerful. "She's the reason this event exists," Marcus said. "Her early work laid the foundation for this charity. Her ideas, her network, her heart. And she wasn't even invited." A man in a navy suit stepped forward. "Is this true?" he asked, looking at me directly. I nodded. "I helped launch the first campaign. Years ago." Another voice chimed in. "I remember that. You were the one who pitched the education initiative, right?" "Yes," I said. "That was me." My father shifted uncomfortably. His wife, my stepmother, stood beside him, her expression unreadable. He glanced at me, then at Marcus, then back at the crowd. Her grip on her clutch tightened. Marcus turned to my father. "You didn't just forget her. You erased her." The words weren't loud, but they echoed. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked at me, and for the first time in years I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger. Not pride. Something closer to regret. People began approaching me. Slowly at first. A former board member. A retired professor. Even a journalist who had once written a piece dismissing my work. They came with questions, with memories, with quiet apologies. "I didn't know," one said. "I should have reached out," said another. I smiled politely, accepting their words without bitterness. I hadn't come for validation. But it was arriving anyway. My stepmother finally stepped forward. "Evelyn," she said, her voice low, "I didn't realize you were still involved." I looked at her. I never stopped. I just stopped announcing it. She nodded, unsure what to say next. Then she stepped back, letting the moment pass. My father remained silent. He didn't move. Didn't speak. But his silence was louder than any apology. He had underestimated me. And now he had to watch me rise. Marcus leaned in. "You sure you don't want to stay?" I shook my head. "I've seen what I needed to see." He smiled. "Then let me walk you out." We moved toward the exit together, passing clusters of guests who now looked at me differently. Not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman who had quietly shaped their world. At the door I turned to Marcus. "Thank you." "No," he said. "Thank you. You changed my life." I hugged him. Brief. Warm. Then I turned to the staff member still holding the box. "Make sure it's displayed properly." He nodded quickly, almost nervously. As I stepped outside, the air felt different. Lighter. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt whole. I hadn't needed revenge. I had earned respect. And that was louder than any insult my father had ever given me. The valet brought my car around. I slid in, closed the door and looked back at the building one last time. The lights still sparkled. The music had resumed. But something had shifted. Inside, my father stood among people who now knew the truth. And outside, I drove away with something far more valuable than an invitation. I drove away with my name restored. The city lights faded behind me as I drove through quiet streets, the hum of the engine steady beneath my thoughts. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. The kind of calm that comes after years of noise. I had walked out of that gala with my name intact, my dignity untouched, and something deeper: clarity. I didn't need to be on anyone's list. I had already built my own. Back at my apartment, I kicked off my heels and sat by the window. The skyline blinked in the distance, but my eyes drifted to the framed photo on my desk. Grandpa, in his garden hat, holding a crooked tomato with pride. That picture had followed me through every office, every move, every chapter. He was the one who taught me how to grow things: plants, ideas, people. I remembered sitting on the porch with him one summer years ago. I was 17, angry, confused, and tired of being invisible in my own home. He handed me a notebook and said, "Write down what you want to build, not what you want to prove." That sentence stayed with me. It shaped everything. After leaving home, I didn't chase headlines. I chased purpose. I started small, consulting for startups, mentoring young founders, helping women who had been told they weren't ready or qualified. I saw myself in them. The hesitation in their voices. The fire in their eyes. I didn't need to be their savior. I just needed to be their mirror. One of the first women I mentored was named Priya. She had a brilliant idea for a sustainable textile company but couldn't get a single investor to take her seriously. "They said I'm too soft," she told me once, tears brimming. "That I don't look like a CEO." I helped her build a pitch deck. Coached her through meetings. Introduced her to the right people. Today, she runs a multi-million-dollar brand and hires women from rural communities to lead her production teams. She still sends me handwritten notes every quarter. Not updates, gratitude. I never asked for credit. I never wanted it. I just wanted to make space. That's why I started the foundation. Not for recognition but for rebellion. A quiet one. For every person who'd been told, "You're not on the list." We funded ideas that didn't fit the mold. We mentored leaders who didn't wear suits. We created rooms where no one had to prove they belonged, they just did. The foundation grew faster than I expected. Not because of flashy campaigns but because of word of mouth. People trusted us. They saw results. They saw transformation. And they saw me, not as a figurehead but as someone who understood what it meant to be overlooked. One afternoon while reviewing grant applications, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Just my name on the envelope. I opened it slowly, unsure what to expect. It was from my father. The handwriting was familiar. Precise. Controlled. Just like him. I was wrong, it read. You didn't need me. But I needed you. No apology. No explanation. Just that. I stared at the letter for a long time. Not because I was angry. I wasn't. I was still. Like the moment after a storm when everything is quiet and you're not sure what to do with the silence. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Some things are better left unsaid. Closure doesn't always come with conversation. Sometimes it comes with understanding. I tucked the letter into a drawer, not to forget but to remember. To remember that even the people who fail us can still see us. Eventually. Today my life is simpler. I still work. Still mentor. But I also rest. I spend time with people who see me, who value me. I host small dinners, not galas. I walk in gardens, not boardrooms. I laugh more. I listen more. I don't chase lists anymore. I make my own. And every name on it matters. There's a young man named Leo who reminds me of Marcus. He's quiet, observant, and brilliant. He's building an app to help caregivers manage schedules and medications. He told me once, "I don't think I'm the right person to lead this." I looked him in the eye and said, "You are. Because you care." That's the legacy I chose to build. Not one of power but of presence. Not one of noise but of impact. Sometimes I get invited to panels and conferences. Sometimes I decline. Not because I don't appreciate the gesture, but because I know my worth isn't tied to a microphone or a spotlight. It's tied to the lives I've touched. The seeds I've planted. Grandpa used to say, the best gardens aren't the ones with the biggest flowers. They're the ones where everything grows together. That's what I've built. A garden of people. Of ideas. Of second chances. And when I look back, I don't see the gala. I don't see the list. I see the legacy. My